Hello everyone, welcome to the lecture video of week 7. So this week we'll take a look at the rest of the chapter 5. But before we get into the lecture, let's talk about the extra credit, which is right over here. So if you click that link right there, it gives you the instruction on how you can complete the extra credit. So this is gonna count towards 20% of your, not 20%, 20% of your total grade of first exam. So if you meet all the requirements and successfully complete this assignment, you will get a 20 extra. But if you say only did one part of it, you only get like a partial grades and things like that. So make sure to follow the instruction closely. And this is just writing about like a brief research paper on different art movements, and also making a master study of a master work. Excuse me, just had a dinner, so so that is it. So just take a look at this, and if you have any questions, just let me know. All right, so let's get to the lecture. If I can, give me 1 second. Interview. Go. So last week we talked about two principles of design, which were unity and balance, and how they are used to create visual composition. In this week, we will take a look at these 4 points, and finish up the chapter 4. So we're gonna look how to explain how artists emphasize as parts of the work, and how artists relate scale and proportion, and characterize the use of the rhythm, and to analyze formal elements and principle of designs and things like that. So let's take a look at this guy right here, emphasis. So the emphasis gives prominence to part of a design. So it means that our attention is drawn more to a certain part of a composition than to others. So if the emphasis is on a relatively small, clearly defined area, we call this the focal point. So we talked about this last lecture. I think it was a lecture before maybe. We looked at this example. So we talked about how the relatively small moon right here has the heavy visual weight, and how it is used as a focal point in this composition. So it is the first thing that our attention catches. Next example is this. So in this painting, where is the focal point? Can you see the focal point, or the vanishing point in this case as well? And why and how? So focal point, I'll say, is centered right here. That is because all the architectural lines is converging into the point right above these two main figures' head, which is Socrates and Plato. So this optical illusion, we call it linear perspective. So through the linear perspective, the artist achieved this focal point, or the vanishing point in this case. And we also talked about how radial symmetry uses the center point as the focal point, also reference point to create this repetition. So in this case, the center point right over here would be the focal point, because all the visual element is converging into the center point right there. Right, so let's break it down to emphasis, and different types of emphasis, and different approach on emphasis. So anyway, any anomaly or break from the norm tends to stand out because we have a tendency to seek to connect the verbal and visual information. So a mismatched word or an isolated shape immediately attracts our attention, as we can see in this example right over here. So in the example, pentagram emphasized the word design through its separation from the word magazine here. And by placing this anomaly at the bottom edge of the composition, they made it even more eye-catching. And with the use of this strong red color as well. And the example that we looked before, so just as a pattern tends to increase connection among visual elements, so any break in the pattern emphasizes isolation. So this example, 18 umbrella establishes the pattern within the composition so beautifully in this case, but it is broken by this one red single umbrella right over here. So through this break from the pattern, it acts as a focal point at the center of the viewer's attention. So you see how the isolation is working. So this just one breakpoint of the repetition is isolated by this, overwhelmed by these other elements, but still has the equal amount of visual weight compared to others because it has so much information. Alright, let's take a look at this work. So this work, Doho Sa's Fallen Star, is a 3/4 size cottage based on an actual house in Providence, Rhode Island. So this work is about how he felt like he dropped from the sky and landed on a completely different world when he was studying at the Rhode Island School of Design. So if Fallen Star was placed on the ground in a suburban setting, it would simply read as a very, tiny house. But now, precariously installed on the side of the campus building, 7 stories up, it is a powerful anomaly. It's a very interesting work, so let's take a look at this.
Doho Sa, Fallen Star, 2012.
We followed Doho's work for a while before inviting him to the campus in 2006. He's thought long and hard about the idea of home. When he first came to this country to go to graduate school, he came from Seoul, Korea, and came to go to RISD, the Rhode Island School of Design in Providence. He felt completely displaced and disoriented, like he'd been dropped from the sky into a whole new world. He's thought about how a house becomes a part of you. Your home is a part of you. He wanted to make this a physical house that had come from afar. People have compared it to The Wizard of Oz and the tornado picking up the house and sending it up into the air.
This, more than any other piece in the Stewart collection, involved a collaboration of different people, different disciplines. It was experimental on the one hand, like every piece in the Stewart collection, but it was the most complicated, the most complex from a standpoint of construction and design. The cottage was built down on Warren Mall, on the plaza, where everybody could see it over a period of months. This construction that was happening in the middle of the plaza, slowly becoming a house. And then one day, and this was one of the big events of the year, people came running from all directions to watch the hoisting of this house to the top of the building. The construction workers, the company that orchestrated the whole thing, Pacific Southwest Structures, were truly heroes in making this completely unique thing come off without a hitch. This artwork does something and exists on different levels in a way that I have never seen and that I think is unique among all works of art in public spaces, because it is on the one hand so very, very public, way up on top of this building, visible from miles around. It has this abrupt and amazing look from down below, and then as you get closer to it and go upstairs and go into the garden and go into the piece itself, it acquires this really, really personal dimension.
The house is very familiar once you're in. It is familiar, but it is not familiar feeling. You have to adjust, just as Doho did when he came here. You have to adjust both mentally and physically, in the case of this house, to your new surroundings. Of course, we had to furnish the house, and it had to have wallpaper. The wallpaper guy was luckily a perfectionist. It's on a tilt, so it was very hard. There's not a plumb line in the whole house. There are comfortable couches and chairs. Everything's scaled down. We found smallish things in thrift shops and around. Some of it is genuine antique and some of it is not. But it's a mix, like all homes, of various sort of household items, including family photographs, including a television which works, including steam, which appears to be smoke coming out of the chimney. There are clocks that have the correct time. There are lights that come on at night. It does appear that somebody is living there.
The garden is...
Alright, so that's the hopes of fallen stars.
Intimate, it's
Alright, let's take a look at different approach of emphasis. So in a composition, every inch of a composition has a distinct power. So as a result, place of alone can increase the importance of particular shape. So the compositional center is always especially important. So in The Power of the Center, a psychologist, Rudolf Arnheim, discussed centricity, which is the compressive compositional force, and eccentricity, expansive compositional force, which is forcing outward. So as you can see in this example, the central white square pulls us into the middle of the painting while the explosive red rectangles pushes towards the outer edge. Similar concept can be seen in this example. So the red circle in the center pushes out while the white circle resists that energy and contains it all while they are sitting on a rather peaceful and calming environment. So this has the really stark contrast between these two elements. This effect is even more pronounced in this example, so any representation of another human attracts our attention and faces are of a particular interest. So in this example, 4 major lines and a series of concentric circles direct us inward toward the man's left eye, and the fragmented text extend outward beyond the edge of the composition. So continually compressing and expanding, the seemingly simple image pulls the viewer inward while simultaneously appearing to extend outward beyond the frame in this example right here. Next approach is emphasis through contrast. So contrast is created when 2 or more forces operate in opposition. So if you take a look at this example, what would be the forces? It would be the strong pattern of the white umbrella and the strong visual resistance of the pattern achieved through that single umbrella right over here. And these two forces operate in opposition and creates a strong contrast, which results in the emphasis on the red umbrella. So let's take a look at these 4 examples. So in A, the repetition and pattern is broken by the square on the bottom right, thus creating this center of the interest and the emphasis. And in B, the emphasis is created through the stark difference in visual weight. So this right over here seems way more heavier than this square right over here. So creating this discrepancy, and thus creating the emphasis on this rather dwarf size of the square right over here. And in C, through introducing texture, which contains more visual information. So they are roughly similar size, but it has this contrast of one having the texture, so it creates this point of interest and the emphasis on this square. In D is mix of everything, so through contrast, balance, unity, imbalance, and asymmetric composition and proportional location. So when the balance is just right, we can create powerful composition from any of these combinations. So let's take a look at these examples. So contrast in scale. So contrast in scale, the small airplane and the moon becomes charged with meaning when combined with the image of impossibly large sleeping child. And next is contrast in shape. So this is a brilliant example of contrast by shape as well as emphasis by separation. So the small note pinned at the right edge of the canvas gains so much power that it easily balances the larger figure, filling the rest of the frame. You can see this guy and this. And contrasting color. So one of the most compelling uses of emphasis by color occurs in Schindler's List, a film directed by Steven Spielberg. So midway through the black and white film, a small girl in a red coat is shown walking to her death. But she breaks away from the line and runs back to the to hide under the bed in a nearby house. This is the only use of color in the main body of the film, so when it appears again, her body is being transported to a bonfire. So this simple use of color creates one of the most emotional moments in a remarkable film here. So let's take a look at that.
Let's go, please. Come on.
Can you believe this? As if I don't have enough to do, they come up with this. I have to find every rag buried up here and burn it. The party's over, Oscar. They're closing us down, sending everybody to Auschwitz.
When?
I don't know. As soon as I can arrange the shipment, maybe 30, 40 days. That would be fun.
Alright, so that's Steven Spielberg's Schindler's List. Alright, so next principle of design that we're going to be talking about is proportion and scale. So proportion and scale both have to do with size. So scale means the size in relation to a standard or normal size. So the word normal is very subjective, and normal size is the size we expect something to be. For example, a model airplane is smaller scale than a real airplane, and a 10-pound prize-winning tomato at the country fair is a tomato on a large scale. So we measure normal size based on our experience and what we know. So in the example right over here, after his exploration to Africa, a Dutch explorer, Robert Jacob Gordon, helped viewer to understand the normal size of a giraffe by including measuring stick, which is a human being right next to it. Proportion and scale create two types of size relationship, so both strongly affect compositional balance and emotional impact. So proportion refers to the relative size of visual elements within an image or within a figure. So as you can see in this example right over here. So for example, the image on the left here demonstrates proportional relationship within a human head, such as how eyes are roughly 60% above chin and the bottom of nose is roughly halfway between the eyes and chins and etc. So you guys probably seen this before. So this example called Vitruvian Man is a drawing made by Leonardo da Vinci as a study of the proportion of human body. So most designs distribute information fairly evenly within the format, so with only modest size variation among the different parts. So designers can create an eye-catching composition through exaggerating its proportion. So in this poster, the designer exaggerated the scale of the word "not" right over here, causing this asymmetrical balance. Then the large white word is repeated in the final tagline, saying this is not business as usual. So here shows that how use of the scale and proportion is effectively working together to create this emphasis. In this work, Shuttlecock by the Claes Oldenburg shows the artist's clever use of scale. Alright, so let's talk about the next principle of design, which is rhythm. So rhythm is a sense of movement that is created by the repetition of multiple units in a deliberate pattern. So as you can see right over here, and this is emphasized by color. So it is based in repetition, and it is a basic part of the world we find ourselves, such as the seasons, weeks, months, years, and things like that. So through repetition, any of the visual elements can take on rhythm within a work. So in Maya Lin's Storm King wave field, mass provides rhythm, and the mass of wave form repeated again and again.
What's been really the exploration for me is that, especially within the art, I've gotten back to my first love and interest, which is science and nature and the environment. So I'm always trying to reveal in my art a little bit about nature that literally is invisible to us.
For over 25 years, Maya Lin has been blurring the line between art and architecture, creating subtly minimalist works that suggest the natural world. Ms. Lin first came to public notice in 1981 as a 21-year-old senior at Yale, when, in a blind competition, her design was selected from more than 1,400 others for the Vietnam Memorial in Washington, D.C. Since then, she has gone on to produce well-received works in 3 different forms: architecture, art, and memorials.
What I've been doing for the last 20 years has been all about my interest in perceptions and possibly an ordering of the landscape.
Wavefield, her new earthwork project at the Storm King Art Center, is an 11-acre installation that will open to the public next spring. It consists of 7 rows of undulating hills, which are shaped like ocean waves, cradled in a gently sloping valley.
I often work in series in my works, and this will be the third and last of works called the wave fields that basically take what you think of as an identifiable imagery. We all know what a water wave looks like, but I'm always trying to get you to take a different look at it. The first wave field is in Michigan. The waves are 3 to 5 feet high. You deliberately can sit in almost a cupped wave, read a book. It's very intimate in scale. The second in the series tripled the scale of the site, so from 10,000 it went to 30,000, and the waves were much more reminiscent of how water travels over sand. So these waves were only about a foot high, so it became a very different relationship how you walk through it. And I always knew that I wanted to culminate the series with a field that literally when you were in it, you became lost inside it. So the waves had to become much larger than you. These waves range from 12 to 18 feet above your head. And whether you walk through a row of waves or whether you're walking wave to wave from the high to the low to the high to the low, very interested in how it changes. About a year ago, I started using.
All right, so that's Maya Lin's wave field. This example, created by Santiago Calatrava, and his sculpture Wave, called Wave, shows rhythm through its construction and its motion. So the work is made of bronze bars lined up side by side, creating the arrangement of a short and choppy rhythm when seen from the side. And when the work is set in motion, they rise and fall in sequence, creating reminiscent of ocean waves that are constantly rising and falling. So let's take a look at it real quick. And notice how the motion is reflected on the water to amplify this sense of the repetition and pattern. Get away here. All right, let's take a look at this example. So Bridget Riley's drift number 2, and it shows that repeated a simple line to create an undulating rhythm similar to waves on water. And in this example, vibrant words create a spatial rhythm, warm and cool color in various values and intensities cause some words to advance while others recede. Here is a little bit different looking example. So Niklas Troxler used the looser and more layered approach to rhythm in his poster for the jazz festival. So breaking every rule of a good design, he combined multiple fonts in various sizes, and seemingly random punctuation marks complicate matter further. And like a sophisticated jazz piece, the entire composition balances on the verge of a chaos, but it is held together by an underlying rhythm of dots, circles, and straight lines. Visual rhythm can be as regular as a waltz or as syncopated as jazz. So multiplication, fragmentation, and superimposition accentuates the nude figure descending on this Marcel Duchamp's staircase in the image right over here. Before ending this lecture, let's practice analyzing one work more fully to show how these points of view combine into a more complete way of seeing. So let's take a look at this work, Pablo Picasso's Girl Before a Mirror, and practice doing a formal analysis. So let's break it down, this painting one by one. So first, let's talk about unity. So where can you see the unity? So first thing that I'll say is that the painting is very unified by sharing this quality, line quality, which has this thick black border lines. Also, overall shape, the entire frame is split right in the middle, creating this nice proportional balance. And through that, it encapsulates this woman right here and this child right here, which creates this kind of a proportional unity. Also, the background is working to create this pattern to create unity within the and encapsulating the subject matter, which is these two figures right here. And let's talk about the balance. So balance, we already talked about how the entire frame is split right in the middle to show this woman and this child. And another, we can see that this face is also split in the middle, right in the middle, but it achieves this, but this lighter area is a little bit larger than this colored area, so that it creates this nice balance between these two sides of the face. And this entire composition is very crowded. There's not much background going on, so everything is very filled into the frame. So I think that helps to create the balance overall visually. And you can notice how this kind of a line work is balanced with this circular thicker border line right over here and things like that. And here too, contrasting color is balanced by evenly having the almost even area of occupants. And let's talk about emphasis. So here emphasis is placed by what could that be? So I'll say this is the thick border lines, just thick border lines covering this main figures. So when you take a look at this work of art, where does your eye goes to the first? Well, that is very difficult question, especially for paintings like this, because there's a lot going on there, and Pablo Picasso used a lot of primary color, which is it packs a lot of punch and it's just like visually popping out. So if you everyone's gonna say differently, but if I have to say, I'll say it goes to the face first, especially this face right over here. We talked about how human subjects automatically attracts our attention, and especially the face is particular point of the interest. So I think the first thing that I see is this woman's face, and I notice her empty gaze, and I just follow her gesture, and then kind of get lost somewhere around here. But I follow her limb right here, and then from here I start to investigate this figure right over here. So the reason why this pops up, this is more attention catching than this, is because I think that it is painted in darker color, which tends to recede more, and this has more punchy primary yellow and red, which advances more. And also it uses a lot of warmer color, which expands a lot, whereas this uses the a cooler color, which compresses. Then after that, it's just like I get to see this second figure right here, and then I investigate what is going on, and I began to appreciate this kind of a pattern work at the same time, how he's achieving this compositional balance. And then my attention moves back to the body part, this figure's body, and then kind of see how this kind of has this contrast of this jagged line compared to this all smooth and curvy lines. So that is just explaining where my eye is going and how I'm reading this painting. And let's talk about the proportion. So like I said, the proportion is evenly spaced right in the middle. So half of the painting is this figure and the other half of this painting is this figure. But notice how Pablo Picasso retained that kind of a proportion of facial feature, so that it's still registered as a face. But if he were to really lost that proportion between these facial features, it might have been much more awkward, and it's harder for viewers to register it as a face, like what's just happening over here. And let's talk about rhythm. So here, overall, it has a lot of movement within the composition. It has a lot of this swifting curves, and everything seems like it's in a motion. And and this background has this repetition, creating this kind of a very chaotic, at the same time very busy repetition within the composition. So I think that is creating nice contrast between this kind of a curvy and more of a continuous movement, whereas the background is more abrupt, is more angled, and it's more sharper compared to the lines and the rhythm of the line work of this describing these two figures. So what I just did what I just did for like 6 minutes and 30 seconds is called formal analysis. So it is just breaking down the painting one by one and kind of decoding what the artist intended and what artist did to create his composition. So I want you to practice your own formal analysis, because that is going to be an assignment 1 week, and it is it is better to kind of so next time you watch any kind of artwork, start to think about all these design principles that we learn from this chapter, which is the unity, balance, emphasize, scale, proportion, and rhythm. So try to point out like the different principles or the elements of design as well. So in this case would be the line and things like that. And also we learned about how color is used to convey different kind of or evoke different kind of information or emotions and things like that. So here obviously it has a lot of warm and primary color, which tends to grab the attention a lot better than like a pastel dumbed down colors. At the same time, it uses a lot of warm colors, whereas in this figure, Pablo Picasso almost isolated this part of the figure, this subject, and he exclusively used this color of the blue. So, well, there's got to be a reason behind that. So think about what kind of reason would that be, and things like that. So that is it for the chapter 5. And so I understand that chapter 4 and 5, it has a lot of like this technical terms and things to remember. So you don't have to know everything, but I still want you to learn how to do what we just did, the formal analysis. And if you are not too sure about particular principles or elements of design, just let me know so that we can kind of like talk about it, and then I'll give you more examples and things like that so that you will have a better understanding of what they are. So just like the last week, we're gonna have an activity next week. Just making you guys have a better understanding of the principle of design that we learned today. So that is it for today's lecture. And also if you go to the Moodle, there is a late work submission page right here. So if you are behind of any kind of a weekly assignments, make sure to submit it right over here, and then make sure to name your file so that I know which assignment this is. And it is always good to just let me know, email me saying that, hey, Mr. Professor Han, I submitted the week 1 assignment and things like that, so that I know that, so that I'm notified, and then go to the grading and then adjust your grade accordingly. So if you obviously late works you will receive the late penalty on the late works, but still something is better than 0. A lot of people think that F is the worst, but no, F is not the worst. F is at least, it can be 59% of your grade, 59 out of 100. But 0 is just 0. So make sure to submit your late works by this Friday. So all the assignments up till now, I will accept it as a late works. But after this week, I will not be accepting any kind of a late works. So so make sure to do some catch up this week, and then so if you have any questions on the extra credit assignment or anything like that, just let me know, and I'll see you guys on next activity video. All right, bye.